All right, welcome to another edition of Twice Told Tales. With us today is Leandro Bracamonte from Argentina, and yeah, let's get started. Could you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us sort of how you came to be speaking fluent Farsi without an accent?
Yes,
How did that
it
happen?
will be a pleasure for me. I'm Leandro Bracamonte from Argentina. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Mm, I am Persian teacher for foreigners, for non-Persian speaker. It's a discipline with the name of ASFA in Persian, and I have my own institute here in Argentina with the name of Salman Farsi. We are teaching Persian language and literature for the entire Hispanic world.
Wow. And you have locations around Latin America?
Through the internet, we are teaching
Okay, wow, that's great. Oh, that's interesting.
also for Spain and Guinea Equatorial. Guinea Equatorial, it's an African country who
Yeah.
speaks in Spanish.
Wow.
Very good. That's amazing.
How many
Can you
students
tell
do you
us?
have participating in that?
Excuse me again, please.
How many students participate in your program?
Almost 50.
Wow, that's great.
Yes, it's a record, and it's important to know that the Hispanic world, yes, I mean Latin America, but also the all the countries that speaks in Spanish, uh, like I said before, Spain, Guinea Equatorial, also United States of America. You know, it is exactly there is a million people in United States of America that are speaking Spanish, Mexico, and to the south of America. Okay, the Hispanic world is um, is so far from Iran. Okay, between my own country, Argentine Republic, and the Republic of Islamic of Iran, there is 30,000 kilometers. Okay, it's so far. For this reason, the the pulls and connections between the Iranian world and the Hispanic world are very weak. Okay,
Mm.
and our duty, our work is to build a big pull, a big connection between these two worlds.
Amazing. Um, yeah, why do your students usually want to learn Persian?
Okay, there is many reasons. There is
Mhm.
many reasons. For example, I can I can say mainly three. The first is the interest and the love for Iranian culture and literature. Okay, there is many fans of books and literature that they are knowing or are reading Omar Khayyam, Hafez, and Sadi. Hence, we have very few translations of these writers, but there is many people who loves um, Asian Asian literature
Mhm.
from Japan, Korea, and China. And then they are knowing the Persian literature, and this is one of the main reasons to learn Persian in the Hispanic world. The second is the tourism. Okay, there is a lot of people. It's very common to know people who wants to have the experience Byul-Chul Han, the philosopher of Korea, but he's also German, said in one of his books, The No Things, Las No Cosas, that in nowadays the people wants more to have experience instead to have things. For these reasons, for this reason, there is a lot of people to travel around the world. It's more and more and more. And there is an issue that is very important to know. Every people who travel to Iran, it's mandatory, it's compulsory for them, of course, not in a compulsory way, that they fall in love with Iran. It's one of the best country to for tourism and for tourists. Both is not the same thing. Okay, for this reason, everyone who travels to Iran, when he or she backs to their own country, they start to read and know more about Persian culture. And this is my reason because I decided for myself to start to um, to read Persian and study Persian language. I went to Iran without the Persian language, but I said to myself, I have to know, I have to read this beautiful language. I returned to my country, Argentina, and I've started to study Persian. This is one. This is the second main reason, and the third is the Islam. Okay, in the end of this century, Islam will be the main religion in the world. Okay, for this reason, also in South America and the Hispanic world, there is many converts or migrants that they want to know more about the deen of Islam. I mean the religion of Islam, and specifically the Shia sect. Okay, the 12 Shia branch of Islam. And for this reason, there is many people that, in order to know more about Mazhab, the school of thought, okay, they decided to study Persian language.
Very interesting. What about yourself? You said that you traveled to Iran. When did you travel to Iran and how long did you stay? And why did you decide to visit Iran?
Okay, for the first time was the year 2010. Okay, it's 12 years ago. I went there to visit Qom and Mashhad. Okay, it was a ziyara, a religious tourism, and was an important experience for me. For this reason, whenever I returned to my country, I decided to start Persian. But at this moment, well, it wasn't. There is there wasn't any tool or professor or teacher for learn Persian in a proper way. For example, I learned the writing form of Persian. Okay, Neveshtari, Nizam Neveshtari, the writing form. But then, whenever I returned to Iran, I was talking like a book, and everyone laughed to me, and was very funny. For example, I used to say میتونم میتوانم یک پرسش بکنم از شما.
Yeah, which is very, very formal
Yes, yes.
Persian.
Any Iranians talk like this, but okay, I fixed it.
Great, great.
So how did
And
you? Sorry, how did you teach yourself then, being outside of Iran?
I was an Iranian here that he was my teacher, but he wasn't a professional of linguistic issues. Okay,
Mhm.
for this reason, I um, like by myself and with his help, I study Persian.
Do you have a favorite poem or poet or writer? Persian poet or writer?
Many of them, really, many of them, almost all of them. But I have a special connection with Attore Nishaburi.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I can say he's my favorite because um, it's it's he's a writer and he's also a master. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
he can really guide you in his books. Okay, that he has many. We can also know him. We can also discover him. For example, in his Asrorname, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the book of secrets, he also tells about his physical situation. Okay, um, it's known that he was martyrized. Okay, he was killed by the Mongols
Mm-hmm.
in their attack to Iran, and I have a special connection with him. Almost, I love his book, the Manticore. I don't know how it's is the translation to English. Of course, there is one, but there is many translations of this book. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the I don't know, the wave of birds, the how
Logic
it's
of the
been.
bird, like that.
Yes, the
Magic.
how it's
The,
been translated to English. In Spanish, there is, for example, el coloquio de las aves, ¿m? El lenguaje de las aves, ¿m? The
Mhm.
language of the birds, and really, this is my favorite book of Persian literature.
Mhm.
And then I love Nizami Ganjavi, because the role of the woman in his tales, in his literature, okay, the Hamza in Arabic, it's an Arabic word that means punch, okay, five.
Mhm.
Uh, there are five books, okay, it's a collection, Hamza. In every one of these books that are really amazing, the woman have a big role in the tale. For this reason, I really appreciate and like and love the marriage of Nizami Ganjavi.
Very interesting that you like the works because of how he portrays or gives importance to women. That's an interesting point.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, and it's excuse me, dear Satori, it's important to know that Nizami Ganjavi have been wrote, excuse me for my poor English, these books circa 1,000 years ago. It's
not bad.
important to know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Right. So you also lived in Iran, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me about your experience living in Iran? What did you like the most about living in Iran? And in general, how was your experience?
Okay, I live it in Iran, and I can say that the main reason for why it was a very influent and good experience for me is the connection with the people. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to know a rude person in Iran. They are very kind with each another. Of course, there is envy in the society. There is envy, angry in the society. It's common, but in a very particular way, they they consider each another like a brother or sister. There is a respect for the own Iranian society. Okay, and this is the reason because for me was a big experience. Okay, it's it's really nice that the second issue, it's very important, it's that Iranians have, okay, not only this Iranian society, okay, all Iranian history, the all Iranian people around the history has a particular um how to say it property
Mm-hmm.
they for example for the German people it's very important to reach the perfection. Okay, for Iranians the beauty has this role. Beauty in Iran, and whenever the Iranian are, there is also beauty. The office, the industry, also the jails has their own beauty. For this reason, to experiment the experience of the beauty in the Iranian way is really the experience of my life, I can say.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you saw some sort of dedication to beauty among Iranians. Did you also feel that there is anything similar between the Iranian culture and the Argentinian culture?
Yes, yes. And I can explain that in opposition with another people. We are not called like another people. We, South American and Iranians, and I can say the most all of the Middle East people, okay, also the people of Bilad Sham. Do you know what Bilad Sham is?
The
A part,
Levant.
yes, Lebanon,
The
Syria,
Levant,
Jordan,
Levant.
yeah,
Yeah,
Levant,
maybe. Yeah.
exactly the Levant. The Levantine people and Iranians, we are not called people. This is the main connection between South America and the Middle East, the Levant and the Iranians. The all Iranians, not just Persian, okay? Azeris, Pashtun, Kurd,
Hmm.
Lor, Gilaki, and Baluch also.
What are you saying their main connection is
It's
between Levant?
to not be cold, not be cold people.
Oh, you mean to
Like
be
they're
like warm-hearted and be welcoming?
Yes,
Well, yeah,
exactly.
I think that stretches all the way, and I think for reasons stretching to about 1,000 years ago when the author you were talking about was writing. Is that is the trade route. I mean, that was the lifeblood from of goods between Africa and the south to the cold north. So you had the Silk Road, you had the coastal Arabian trade route along East Africa, that there was a main pipeline that went up from the tip of Africa in the south all the way up through what would be Russia. So like the people in that middle area, that's where all the trade went east-west there. So you had people who made the cultures, if you were cold and unwelcoming, you didn't get as much riches as, and I think that you can see that I personally lived in Central Asia, and you can definitely see that there's
Yes.
there's
For
this
example,
respect for foreigners that is very cultural. It has nothing to do with like tourism or whatever. It has to do with this embrace of foreignness as a thing to respect, not as something to emulate necessarily, but as a thing to respect as a kind of like a friendship.
yes, really, I agree with you. And for example, in many languages of the people of the North, yes, the Norsemen, for example, the Nordic language of the Middle Age, there is few words, or there is tone in many cases, that there is no word for say thank you. Okay. In opposite of that, the Persian language has a lot, has really several words to say thank you, and many of them are loaned from another languages. Okay. For example, I can explain that. Mamnun, tashakor, shuk, sepos, mercy, tashakor mikonam, motashakeram, daset darnakone. They have also phrases to express the thanks, to be grateful with another ones. Okay, this is one of the adjectives, the that shows the ethics of Iranian people. Okay, this issue with us, the South Americans, are very similar. We
Interesting.
we make a lot of emphasis to be grateful with another ones. Did you wait? Did you get to what I mean, or is
Yeah, I understood.
A culture of gratefulness is what you're saying. There's a gratefulness.
exactly?
Yeah, I think that's a unique thing. I mean, that's a significant observation, because there are many cultures that do not have similar values. So yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what the root of that is in Argentina, having been like a product of colonialization, and yeah, it would be interesting to try and think of why that would be. Because the thing about Iran that's fascinating to me is that it's a culture that has basically been it hasn't been destroyed through colonization and war, in which most of other places in the world, it's very hard to find a place that has a deep root from thousands of years ago civilization that hasn't been you know, completely destroyed and by economics or war. So it's something that fascinates me about Iran, and that's why one reason I'd like to be better educated on the culture there, because it's sort of it has more. There's a historical connection there that which you can always look at how things changed, like in other cultures. I mean, like you could just take America or anywhere. I mean, it's all based on colonization. It's all based on some other culture coming in and destroying things or exploiting things, and then you get this mishmash, or you get a reactionary culture. So what do you think in Argentina? What would be the reason for gratefulness there as a cultural phenomenon that you see? Do you think that stems from an indigenous root, or from interaction with colonialism, or what?
No,
Yeah,
it's
like,
excuse me. Go ahead, please.
sorry, I interrupted. Yeah, like you're asking why Argentinians are also grateful to other
Yeah,
people,
why you would
right?
specify that as a phenomenon in Argentinian culture? Like, where do you think that comes from? is it rooted in the indigenous nature of Argentina, or is that a nature that's being brought from Spain? Is that also you can see in Spanish culture?
Yes, this is a big issue to talk about it. South America and Latin America hasn't been colonized by by Spain. By Spain, they have conquered this territory, and Latin America were a province of Spain. Okay,
Hmm.
they founded here universities, and the difference with colonization, we can see that today. Just one example: the Spanish language. Okay, the Spanish language has a big development here in this in this country and this area. Okay, for example, we have a book, the grammar of Spanish book, the grammar of Spanish language in America, that has been written by Andrés Bello, a writer from Venezuela. Okay, but there isn't any literature in the areas of this of South America that has been colonized by England. Okay, for example, in Guyana, the Britain Guyana, the people cannot to speak in the proper way the English. Okay,
Mhm.
England, um, they didn't anything for them. Okay, and the another issue is the racial mixing. All of us in South America are mixed with the white people of Europe. Okay,
Mhm.
instead of that, the England made a genocide of the native people. For
Hmm.
example, in North America, or apartheid, like we can see that in Israel or in South Africa many years ago, or for example in Oceania, in Australia and New Zealand, there is any people, there is none of the native people because they made a genocide. For
Mhm.
us, it's very different. All of the of our heroes in Argentina, like San Martin, for example, Bolivar, Juan Manuel de Rosas, and everyone, they are mixed between the native people and the Euro people. Myself, for example, almost of us. For this reason, it's very important to know that colonization and the the imperial politic of Spain are two things very different. Of course, the Spain made a lot of crimes here and was discrimination of a lot of the things. For this reason, we are independent. Okay, we are our own country today. But if you compare it with areas that have been colonized by England, it's a big difference.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Did you get what I said?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you could look at it as for example, Iran had a bigger area, right? They themselves were probably you could call like colon. I don't know if Iran was a colonizer of the area that it was bigger than it was today in the Persian Empire, but they've retracted
We
into
had,
their sort of
yeah,
central
we also
location, right?
conquered places. Yeah.
And England has done the same thing. Like we were describing, England was all over the world, colonizing and has retracted, and so you have kind of like this core of
England
England now.
killed 5 million Iranians.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
what I was
5
saying. Is like
millions.
Iran is now existing in this uncolonized state and has a lot of resources, and I think that phenomenon is really like one of the roots of what we see today in the political problem. Is you have like this former it was previously an empire. It's been a long time sitting on the shelf with lots of resources, and all these other countries are trying to go in there and colonize it. And yeah, England is still very much a colonizer, even though it pretends that it's no longer has an empire. It definitely has. Probably bigger now than it ever did. It's just done in a way which isn't official. It's all through capital markets. But what did you think of as a Argentinian living in Iran? What were your feelings about Iran? Like how did you experience it there? What would you tell other people from Argentina or from about living there and
Shortly, I can say that I love Iran as much as my country. Okay, I haven't an Iranian citizenship or anything. I have any links to the government, of course, but I love Iran as much as I love my country. Okay, it's my second country. I love both Argentina and Iran at the same level.
So
And
who did you sorry, yeah, interrupting you. Who
go
did
ahead.
you support in the soccer match between Iran and Argentina in the last, or when was it, like 8 years
Uh,
ago, or maybe more than 8 years?
2014, the World Cup
Remember?
of 2014 in
Yes.
Brazil.
yeah, that would have been
Okay,
a
who
hard one. Win-win.
Yeah, yes. As you know, dear Secretary, at that time I was in Iran. Do you
yeah,
remember
I
it?
Oh, wow,
do
that's
Yes,
remember.
I
rough.
was in Iran, and of
Yeah,
course I want Argentina because it's my country.
of course.
Yeah,
Of course.
Uh,
That was a really amazing match. Like, I think
really.
nobody expected Iran to defend and to like play so well against Argentina, because Argentina is like the
Honestly,
very
honestly,
football.
it was the best match of Iran that I watched. Really, Iran played. Yeah, Iran deserved to win that match.
Yeah,
Honestly,
that's
honestly, really. So what was amazing, and I'm very happy for Iranian football. Okay, they are in the World Cup every year. It's a big issue that, and also the Iranian teams. Okay, for example, Persepolis. That is my team there in Iran. The Persepolis of Tehran was in the final of Asian Champions League.
yeah.
Okay,
The
with the Hyundai Motors of Korea. Okay, but um, if if Persepolis get that cap, there is a team World Cup. Okay,
mhm.
and it could be amazing for that reason. It's really interesting that the Iranian football it's growing.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Sorry, yeah.
wow,
Oh my
that's a interesting. I think it's fantastic that we have like a sport around the world that every country loves playing except America. It's just so great. Like everyone else in the world loves this sport, and America is just like, eh. And it's like it's the opposite in everything else in life. Everything else, America is just like pushing its culture into every part of the world, and this one is just like America's totally left out of it. It's
Yeah, but
fantastic.
we're looking forward to seeing the match between Iran and the US
Yes.
November?
Yes, this World Cup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
It should be
Who are you going
interesting.
to support, Chris?
Oh well, I'm pretty agnostic on football in general, but I would say obviously it's Iran has to win that one because just
Great.
the amount of the amount of abuse that America has put on Iran is just insane. So yeah, there's no way it would. Yeah, I hope so. I hope. I mean, if Iran could win, it would be such a good show of force.
So the three
And
of us support Iran.
cultural. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, yes, for sure. But I wanted to say that I like the American people and the American culture. Okay. Also, the culture of UK, United Kingdom, and their people. Okay, and exactly the big enemy, the big historical enemy of Argentina is the UK, but we have nothing to do with their people. Okay, we are
Yeah,
a political problem with them, and uh, and the governments, but the people it's okay, and their culture is okay. For example, um, our beloved Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges. Okay, it's a big Argentinian writer. He used to love the Britain culture, almost the culture of Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. It's not the same with England. We know it's
yeah,
well known for everyone, but it's important to say that we haven't any problem, and it's good to know that many Latin people went to the United States of America and they reach a good level there. Okay, it's really nice. We have just problem with the bombs or the
yeah.
wars around the world. Just that.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I think that's important to say is that nobody should be against the people, but I do think culture changes a lot, and I think I can agree with you in a sort of idealistic sense about American culture, but I think being in, especially since the war on terror has started, the being in constant war against the world, it really does affect the way the culture views the world. And I think it's slowly, and with this new kind of bizarre postmodern cultural reprogramming that people are going through about, not, it's very kind of anti women's rights, like trying to redefine what a woman is and all this craziness that's happening on the left, actually, which is very bizarre. Culture, it's kind of dangerous position for me personally to just say I accept culture because it can be crazy. It can be very hard to wrap your head around what the culture actually is supporting these days, because the culture in America is actively supporting the complete destruction of Ukraine for the price of the for supporting the military industrial complex. I mean, inadvertently, they really think people think they're fighting fascism or whatever, but they're just mindlessly cheerleading the death of every Ukrainian, because the war could be ended tomorrow if they just, if Ukraine just agreed to be non-threatening to Russia. But they decided the U.S. has been poking that bear since 2014, and finally the bear reacted, and now
There is
I don't know.
a responsibility. I get what you
Yeah,
mean. Yes,
yeah.
there is a responsibility. Yes, of course.
But
Yeah.
actually, along those lines of culture and religion, if I can shift a bit, I would be very curious to understand how you became Shia. That's very interesting to me. Like, how did you find that branch of Islam in Argentina?
Okay, there is two reasons. Okay, one of that is that I born in a Levantine neighborhood here in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. Okay,
Oh wow,
that there is a lot of migrants of Lebanon and Syria, and for this reason I grew up here, and I'm living here in Floresta, the Levantine neighborhood of Buenos Aires. For this reason, the Islamic Republic of Iran founded a mosque here, okay,
Hmm.
in this neighborhood. For this reason, my first contact with Islam was with the Shiaism, with the 12 Shiaism, but not just for that was that for okay. The reason is not only because was my first contact with Islam. After that, I made my own research about usul al-din, okay, the an aqaid, the beliefs, okay, the beliefs, or and the fundaments and the books, and how and why we have to accept the guidance of the 12 holy imams and not the another ones. It's very important to know that. For example, in the Christianity, in the Christendom, there is two mainly, three mainly branches. Okay, that we have the Catholics and the Protestants. Okay, and why the craziest groups of the Christianity came from the Protestants? For example, the KKK. Okay, it's a Protestant group, not a Catholic, because the Catholic Church have the an logical and Aristotelical school of thought. Okay, and they have the guidance of the apostles and the doctors and the scholars, of course. This same issue is the issue in Islamic world. Okay, whenever you see that Daesh, Al Qaeda, Taliban, and the craziest groups of the Islamic world are not Shia, there is a reason for that. Okay? Any book has how to say it? Let me search it. Let pillars,
Hmm.
ways to read it. We have the own book, and also we have the interpreter. Okay? For example, in one of Ziyara, okay, the supplications of Shia's school of thought that say, Salamu ala tarjumanahu, okay, the interpreter of Quran. The holy imams are the correct interpreters of Quran. Quran it's is the book of God, but the own book shows to us that there is a correct interpreter, an authority to guide us. This is the roles of imams. If anyone takes the Quran and read, can do anything as Daesh, Taliban, and Al Qaeda do. For this reason, it's very important to have the correct guidance of the holy 12 imams.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
interesting. So you would compare Shiaism with Catholicism in the way the framework of having interpretation for the book is like. I mean, you have priests in Catholicism, right? Who
Yes, but just one thing is not analog, is
Yeah,
not the
for sure.
same.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
the Christianity and Islam are two traditions very different.
Right.
Okay, not almost opposite. Okay, are two branches of the Abrahamic traditions, but it's important to know that it's not analog. Okay, for
Well,
example,
yeah.
we have a priest in Islam.
Right. But in Imam, you were saying
Also,
like the
yes,
interpretation is
okay, the
similar.
interpretation is the guidance.
Yeah.
It's very different to be a priest. Okay,
That's true.
in the Catholic cosmovision, you have to be in the church through the priest.
Yeah, physically.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
for this reason you have the mass. Okay,
Hmm.
we don't need any priest or any sheikh, mullah, or imam. Okay, we have to know the guidance to practice Islam. Okay, it's very different.
Yeah. Mhm.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's
In the Catholic Church,
Mhm.
you have to be in the church.
it's more of
Okay,
a
you have
it's
to be
more of a
related
physical.
to the church. Okay, the spiritual meaning of church, that church is also Christ, is Jesus, is
Hmm.
Jesus spiritually. But for us, no. Okay,
So
for
that
in the Islamic tradition, we are related in, we have a personal relationship directly with God.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's actually strange. That's actually more like in the Protestant uh, relationship with God, and Christianity would feel that that's sort of what they think too, is opposed to
Yes,
Catholics, who traditionally the priest is the intermediary between the people and God. And Protestantism said we don't need that anymore. We can directly read the Bible and relate to God ourselves. So that's sort of
yes. For this reason, for example, in the Catholic Church, you have to read the Catechism,
yeah,
not
right.
not the Bible directly, because it's the religion is the church.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
the religion is the church.
How does
Mhm.
that how do you find that different in with other branches, with like Sunniism and Shia? How do you what do you think is what's the main difference to you, and how that works in your neighborhood, for example? That's that's actually more interesting on a in a community environment. What how do the Shia and Sunni relate in your neighborhood? Like, do you have a lot of Sunni coming to the Shia mosque and vice versa, or are people very
Yes,
segregated?
yes. Historically, when you can read about the Muslim communities in Argentina, the migrants of different countries that came to Argentina and have an Islamic life here, there wasn't any difference. Okay,
Hmm.
Was really there wasn't any sectarian hate or problems in Argentina, as we can say, unfortunately, in Europe or North America nowadays.
Oh,
Okay.
I think you could say that about the whole world for up until about the Iraq War.
Yes, of course, the whole world, but
Yeah,
we are talking about the Islam in the West.
yeah, right.
This is the point. But unfortunately, these problems are growing because the Shia phobia, the
Hmm.
okay, the propaganda against the Shiaism and the stigmatization of the Shia culture and Shia people through Saudi Arabia is growing a lot in the Spanish language.
Well,
It's really a danger issue
you had
nowadays.
an interesting story about that you mentioned before we started the podcast. Maybe you can tell us about that, about your experience of being questioned as a phony fan of Iran. What could you go through that story a little bit?
Yes, yes. One time, taken has been taken a clip of me talking in Persian. Really, it's a bless for me that I can speak Persian like another Iranians. Okay, I haven't accent. Okay, I can speak Persian like an Iranian. It's a bless for me. I thank to God for that. And it's how to say it was I was shocked. I was shocked because it has been published in YouTube and another social media. Um, the Iranians who lives outside Iran came and throw their hate comment saying that I am related to Sepah. I am taking money from the government, or I'm related to Hezbollah, and I am working with religion in my area in Argentina, um, words like that. But the Iranians who lives in Iran was very nice for them. They were shocked and they were very happy to know that there is a foreigner who deeply and sincerely loves the Iranian culture and the Persian language. It's a big issue really because, for example, uh, since many years ago, there is a big interest for the Korean culture. Okay, there is a cultural Korean wave that in Korean language has a name, Hangul. Okay, for this reason, there is 1,000 people around the world who loves Korean culture. They are learning Korean language. Korean language is a language that is talked just in one country, in two countries, but it's just one area, and is few people. Okay, and Persian, there we have more than 100 million Persian speakers around the world, and it's one of the biggest heritage, uh, literally heritage in the world. But anyone thinks that whoever is interested in Korean culture and loves Korean language and loves Korean literature is a spy of North Korea, or they are working in the South Korean lobby around the world. Anyone thinks like that. But the Iranians who live outside Iran thinks something like that. For the people like us, like me and my friends and my students who loves Iran sincerely, deeply, without any links to the government, the politics, or something like that.
Do you think those
Almost.
comments? Sorry to interrupt. Do you think those comments from abroad, like that you're saying, are Iranians living abroad? Do you think it's possible they could be just trolls working in Tel
I,
Aviv? Because it sounds a lot like the same kind of Hasbara comments you get on Palestine things, where they just try and make it seem like they blame you for. I don't know. It seems. Do you think that's possible? That there might be a lot of this kind of phony Israeli-funded dialogue involved in that?
Excuse me, probably the
Like,
question.
do you think this backlash you were getting may be like a Zionist funded conversation? Because they do a lot of these fake internet accounts where they make it look
Oh,
like
no, no,
and
no, no.
attacking Iranian anything is real
Yes.
fair game for Israel.
No, okay, there is trolls. There's troll centers. The troll center is like a headquarter nowadays. Okay,
Yeah.
the information and propaganda is it's an area of war. Okay, many years ago, the Iranian government was blamed because they forbidden the access to Facebook. But nowadays we know that Facebook is not neutral. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, they're no neutral
Yeah.
centers of communication. They have a role. For example, the ban of Donald Trump. Of course, I don't like Donald Trump, but why he was banned? Okay,
Yeah.
and what about
Exactly.
us? If the CEO of Twitter can ban the president of United States of America, what about us?
Exactly.
They're controlling us. Okay, for example, China, they have their own social media, WeChat, and
Yeah.
this is being controlled by the government. Okay,
But do you think?
for example, excuse me,
Yeah.
just
So
one
go.
thing.
Yeah. Go
For
ahead.
example, I don't like the government of my country, of Argentina. I don't like them. But it's better that our social media are being controlled and our information, our data is being saved by own that by Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Okay,
True.
and another thing about that, yes, troll center is very common nowadays in our world because the social media is it's a camp of war. It's another way to make the war. But
Exactly.
unfortunately, there is Iranians that sincerely they have a complex for their own country. Okay, the propaganda against Iran has been taken by many of own Iranians. Okay, this image that Iranian is a dark country, it's a mix. It's a mix of Taliban regime with North Korea. Okay, this is the image of the media, the propaganda, and the
Exactly.
it, it's been think by the but many of the Iranians who lives um, outside Iran. Just one thing, in my opinion, that they said it's true, but of course, the current government of Iran has many fails that have to be fixed by own Iranians, not by the imperialistic. Okay, no, not by but European Union, no, but by international amnesty, not by England and his embassy, not by United States of America, by the own Iranians.